All right, here we go. So this is the follow-up presentation to the last one that I gave back in July, I think it was, July or June. Mm-hmm. And I have learned a lot since then, which is amazing to me. But last time I focused more on what depression feels like, kind of what people experience, some of the contributing factors, what causes it, and some tools to be able to help and manage it. But this time I have planned to give a full concrete list of exactly the steps that I have found really help people to get out of it. So this is really exciting. And it's also a basic outline of the book that I have been planning to write. And so if you want to know anything more about the things that I'm going to be speaking about today, not only are you more than welcome to ask me, but I will be publishing a book within the next few months that go into much more detail about each of these. So, with no further ado, I have broken it into 8 different categories, and it's not because anything particularly special, about there's exactly 8 that you have to hit, but I felt like out of all the tools that I learned, they kind of fit into these categories, although some of them definitely intermingle and fit under more than one category, but this is what I've used to organize my presentation. So first, I'll go over each of them and then go into detail. So, first of all, the first thing to always help when someone especially is in really deep depression and they're having breakdowns is to calm the stress response. That underlies a lot of what is triggering the breakdowns and everything, and if we can implement the tools to calm the stress, that can at least provide immediate relief. It's obviously not going to fix the whole problem, but it can help bring them to a state of calm and not freaking out or having a total breakdown. So calm the stress. Second is replenish your depleted body. And the third one is to connect with people and gather your support network. The fourth is to incorporate movement. Fifth is to reset the brain. And this is kind of where it gets a little more fluid. These aren't concrete, 1, 2, 3 steps, but they build on each other. So I'd say number 6 is seeking professional help. 7 is connecting with your identity and purpose. And then 8, which is kind of number 1 and number 8 and all the ones in between, is to know what you're facing. Know your opposition, know your enemy. By that I mean the more that you understand depression, how it works, the patterns, the symptoms, the triggers, all of these things, everything that you can learn and know about it in general and about your experience with depression will empower you to be able to overcome it. So back to number 1. There's so much to do with stress management. We all know that stress is the enemy, at least prolonged stress. Short-term stress can be a good thing. It helps you adapt, it helps you learn, it helps you grow and stretch. But if it's prolonged, then it can turn toxic to the body. And that's one of the things that has happened to people who struggle with depression. And I know for me, a lot of it was big life changes that happened all at once, and I thought that I was strong enough to handle it all, but I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. I had talked about that in my story last presentation about moving to Nenana, getting married, moving to a totally new place, getting pregnant right away, remodeling our house. Like, hello, I should have known that I was setting myself up. But hindsight is the best teacher. So now I can see some of the things that triggered prolonged response that I couldn't find relief from. So when especially someone is having a breakdown and they just need to be okay, the first thing you can always do is breathe. And I know that sounds really simple, but breathing, deep breathing, is something that helps you get out of your head and back into your body. So if it's the worry, anxiety, whatever it is that was a trigger to you, if you can breathe, it'll bring you out of your head and into your body. And it actually stimulates the vagus nerve in your body, which stimulates the parasympathetic response, which calms your body. So not only does it help you just calm down in your mind, but it physically has a calming effect. And then the next most important thing is to derail the spiraling thoughts. Even, I'm sure all of us, whether suffering from clinical depression or not, have experienced at times where our mind has just taken over everything, and you just feel so much. Oh, sorry, I have to fix that. You just feel so much anxiety and worry. And with someone who has clinical depression or anxiety, it's literally inescapable. It's like your mind just goes and goes and goes, and even if you try to think positively, say, this is irrational, I know it, but I can't escape the fear and the emotions that are accompanying this, and you just go down and down and down. You'll often hear it's a downward spiral, you'll just go downhill. All those things describe what happens. So the best thing that you can do after breathing, just to get you back into your body, is to derail those spiraling thoughts. And that was a big tool that took me a long time to learn, because I would use a lot of different coping mechanisms, but until I learned to shut off that negative spiral of thinking, it's still, no matter what else I did, it still only had a minimum effect. So there's many tools that you can use to derail the spiraling thoughts, but the biggest one that I've used is guided meditation. Because and what I mean by that is you listen to an audio program, whether that's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and it takes you through a mind exercise to calm your body and change your thoughts. And at first, what that would do to me is just put me to sleep. I was just so stressed, so exhausted, so drained, that as soon as I started just relaxing, I would go to sleep. Now, depending on how tired I am, I will fall asleep, but I won't necessarily go to sleep, because that may not be what my body needs, but it helps me to change my mindset, to think more clearly, and to help my body calm down as well. So I have one of my favorite apps for that is called Stop, Breathe, Think. And so you can just go straight to Google Play, look up that app, and the reason why I like this one specifically is because it has you check in with your emotions, your physical state, and your mental state. It asks you, click these emotions or sensations that you're feeling, and it will give you the guided meditations that are best suited for exactly how you're feeling. So that was a great discovery for me, and it helped to know that I'm not just listening to some random relaxation program, but it's one that will specifically target the emotions I was feeling right then. So that app is called Stop, Breathe, and Think. Some of the other ones other things that help to derail spiraling thoughts are using logic games, whether that's Sudoku or anything that takes your mind from active thinking or imagining or emotional thought to concrete logical thought. Actually, one of the tools that my counselor gave me was counting backwards from 100 by sevens. So if you think, like, what is that, 193, and, like, you really have to think to get to the next one? So it quits all of the negative spiraling thoughts, because you have to focus on this logical problem to solve. And that gives you at least enough time to calm down, reframe your thinking, and give you a break from those spiraling thoughts. So some other things that I used to calm my stress response when it was going haywire was essential oils, exercise, which I'll cover more later, taking a nap, and asking for help, which I know is something that a lot of people have trouble doing, especially when you're in such a vulnerable place, is to ask for help. But really, I'll talk more about that later with connecting with people and gathering your support network, is that when I was really, really struggling to even keep myself together, let alone take care of my kids, I knew that there were people that I could call and say, hey, can you just take my kids for a few hours while I reset? And that did a world of wonder to me. So again, there's like way too much to cover here in this presentation, but no, there's a lot of tools out there that I will cover in more depth in my book. So first one, calm the stress response. And again, breathing, doing something to derail the spiraling thoughts to refocus and reset. But really, it's whatever calms your stress. Whatever is a stress relief to you, that is your tool, because the same things don't work for everyone. So the second one is to replenish your depleted body. Often when either the person who is struggling with depression is expressing themselves, or when you're listening to someone express themselves, they'll say, I just feel drained, I feel empty, I feel, really fill in the blank, dark, I feel tired, I feel unmotivated. All these things are words that describe really what is physically going on inside too. And what I learned, especially with postpartum depression, is that because I had just given birth to one baby and then two, well, one and one, making two. I didn't have twins. That back-to-back pregnancies had really, really depleted my body of a lot of nutrients. Now, obviously, not everyone who struggles from depression has given birth to someone, but there are key nutrients that when I started researching about depression, that in general, the vitamins that help to restore people from depression are vitamin B12, in fact the whole B complex, because that helps with energy. Vitamin D is a huge one, which we know in Alaska we're pretty much all deficient in vitamin D, but especially people with depression have a huge deficiency of that. And almost more powerful than any of the rest is omega-3 fatty acids. And there are some studies that have been done that show that megadoses of omega-3 can actually really, that are just as effective as antidepressants, because you're really feeding your brain with the fat that it needs to work properly. So I'm not saying that is a true statement. Go take omega-3 supplements instead of your medication. Like, definitely do that with a doctor's supervision. But the science is out there to show how important omega-3 is in feeding our brains and correcting those deficiencies. A lot of people say that depressed brains are different from a normal, healthy brain. We know that. People have measured it. And for me, through my experience, I think that it's not that people are born with this brain or you just have a depressed brain. It's that the symptoms and the circumstances and like everything that you have experienced brings you to that unhealthy brain. Instead, I guess what I'm trying to say is you're not just born with a depressed brain and you're helpless and hopeless to change that. Even though some of us do have genetic markers of depression, there's a lot that you can do to be able to change how those genetics are expressed so that you don't have to end up like that. And there really are ways to heal your brain instead of just feeling like, oh, I just have this depressed brain. But it's an active and flowing thing that we can be able to heal and influence and recover from. And so just don't want people to feel hopeless about that. So nourishing our brains with those vitamins and omega-3s, and there's several others that can help to nourish people who struggle with depression too. But another huge one is in replenishing your depleted body is sleep. And I did also talk a lot about this in my last presentation, how sleep was a critical factor in my recovery, because I realized that I had been in hyperdrive mode for so long that my brain just shut off. The stress wasn't being relieved and I was just overexhausted. And so at the time that I was pregnant with my second baby, I had to make the decision, do I go on medication or do I just try to deal with things naturally? And at the time I didn't feel comfortable going on medication, but I still had my whole pregnancy to deal with postpartum depression, and I was like, I need to figure something out. Well, during that time, I made it my motto that if I wasn't going to be taking antidepressants, that sleep would be my medication, and that I needed to be as diligent and faithful in getting my sleep as I would be taking any prescription of antidepressants. And you know what? It really, really worked. I wouldn't say that it healed me like I got all the way out of it, but it was one of the biggest factors in restoring my sanity was being almost religious about getting enough sleep, taking naps when I was going downhill. All these things really helped to just bring everything back into perspective and provide what I needed to make it through. And then later when I was able to take medication, then that was another step that helped me get out of it. But I really learned how important sleep was in replenishing our depleted bodies. So these first two steps about calming the stress and replenishing your depleted body are two very crucial steps, because as you'll see as I get later into it about resetting your brain, connecting with people, all of these things, if you talk to someone who's really, really struggling, they literally do not have the energy or the emotional capacity to even do these things. I mean, you hear so often, I can barely even make myself breakfast. I can barely even get out of bed, let alone, think about thoughts and putting myself out there to really connect with people, be social, and be like a buoyant friend instead of a down in the dumps kind of a friend. Like, you just barely have enough energy to do all that. So that's where you can take your recovery seriously by taking care of your body first, which sets the foundation and enables you to have enough energy, enough vitality to then address the underlying issues that are really causing the depression. Because those pathways have been so well worn that it's created these physical manifestations of the underlying disease. And you really can't heal the underlying disease until you first help to heal your body so that you have the energy and the emotional and mental capacity to be able to address the real underlying issues. So the physical cannot be understated, and I think maybe that's where a lot of disconnect is with social perceptions of depression. because we know that it is a disease of the mind. It's a disease of the mind, heart, and body. But people think like, oh, well, everyone has those down days. Everyone struggles with feeling low or tired or lack of motivation, all these things. So you think, well, why can't they just snap out of it? Well, it's because they do not have the physical energy to. And so I like to think that as if someone was struggling with had a broken leg, then everyone knows you have to stay off your leg, you have to stay home and rest. You simply cannot do what you normally would like to or should be able to do. And you have to take that recovery time very seriously, because if you push yourself too hard, you can do more damage to your leg, or even if not necessarily more damage, you can just prolong the whole recovery process. So I really like to encourage people to take your recovery seriously, and even if other people don't see that there's anything wrong, because it is really easy to hide because there's not very many physical manifestations of it, but if you take your recovery as seriously as someone who is recovering from surgery, a broken leg, or cancer, some other serious disease, that you can find healing. But the more you just push it, think like, I can get through this, I can do whatever I still need to do, really, you can't. And it will do more for you and be more beneficial if you take that time to scale back, focus on your recovery instead of just trying to keep up with life. Because trying to keep up with life in the first place is kind of what got you to the hyperactive stress mode. So, connecting with people, step number 3. A lot of times, like I just said, we feel like we need to be strong in order to be in a social environment. But there is an amazing, amazing presentation and a series of books, really, by a woman named Brené Brown. And yeah, good. I'm glad you've heard of her, because she has incredible work that she has done in researching connection, human connection. And she has a TED Talk on it. So if I'll post it in the comments later, the link to this TED Talk. But it talks all about vulnerability. That when we drop our guards and actually sit with people in their emotions, or be willing to express your emotions and your vulnerabilities, your difficulties, all these things, it actually increases your ability to connect and heal. And that's one thing that it took me a while to be comfortable with. And it is the journey for each person in their own depression journey, to know when the time is right and to feel ready to be vulnerable about it. Because really, you kind of have to have accepted it yourself in order to reach out. I mean, and that's not a concrete statement, but for me, I felt like first I had to feel like I was like I had accepted where I was at before I was able to open up to others. But honestly, the sooner you're able to open up and be vulnerable, the sooner the healing can begin. And I realized when I started talking to other people, not only just family members and friends, about what I was really going through, but talking to other people who were struggling with depression as well. It did so much to calm myself and to help me know I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one out there that is struggling with this mental illness. And I'm not just making it up, it's real. Other people are experiencing the same thing, and to help each other through it. And that's really when my healing began, was opening up and sharing my story. And now, like, I never would have guessed that a couple years later I would be sharing my story on Facebook Live, or writing a book or anything like that. And I remember the time where I was struggling to know when and how to start opening up and sharing my story. I had only had a few people at the time that I really opened up to and poured my heart out to. But one person in particular, she encouraged me. She's like, have you ever thought about sharing your story, like publicly, I'm like, I just don't know if I'm ready for that. But it took probably about 7 months or so to toy with that idea and to find, okay, if I was going to share my story, how would I do it? And how would I like make it meaningful to other people? And that's one of the places where the points in my life where I received this inspiration to start learning from my experiences and others in a way that I could write a book and pass it along to other people and share my story that way. And that has been a critical piece in my healing journey. So I'd say the specific keys with connecting with people and gathering your support network are to first find the people who you feel safe with opening up. And it does take time. Sometimes for me, it took a while of kind of like putting feelers out there to see how people responded when I started opening up. But it didn't take long to feel out who would be the ones to listen unconditionally and not put their judgment on what I was sharing. At the same time, there are people that I wished I could open up to that were not ready and would not have really understood what I was going to. But I think, first of all, finding the people who did and considering how to share it with people who didn't, that also helped me to heal as well, because it helped me to bridge the gap between people who were compassionate and people who just didn't understand. And that's okay. Like, there's a lot of experiences that people go through that we don't understand because we haven't experienced ourselves or known someone close to us who has gone through it. So, like, that's totally okay. And I wasn't upset with those people, but you really have to find, okay, who are your key support network people. And then another big one is finding someone who you are willing to let help spot your thinking errors. Because depression really is rooted in distorted reality, distorted thinking patterns, and that's a huge one that I'll go into in a few steps. But for me, that was my husband. Like, I remember one day we were getting ready to go somewhere, and I mean, it was like 10 minutes before we were supposed to leave, and I was having a full-out breakdown. And my poor husband, and amazing husband, he just sat with me on the couch and worked me through, and he's like, just tell me what you're feeling, what's going on. And I just let it all out, and I was like, I feel this, I don't feel like people really care about me. I feel like I'm just alone, and like no one even pays attention. They're all just living their happy lives, and they can't even tell that I'm here like dying inside, and like no one cares. And he's like, is that true? You know people care about you. You know that. And I was like, you're right. I know, when you really think about it, I know that there are people who care about me and love me. But it's just that frazzled moment when you think in those distorted patterns where you manipulate your reality to match what you're feeling, because sometimes you really can't explain what you're feeling, and you find whatever reason to explain these emotions that are coming out of nowhere, you feel like. And so I was just saying, well, like, I'm feeling this way because no one actually cares and takes care of me. And he's like, that's not true. You know people love you. So that was a humbling point for me where I'm like, okay, he is helping me to reset and to see the truth, and I need to be okay with that and not. And, sometimes it does take humility because you just want to be validated. But honestly, when you are not, okay, so I need to be careful with this too, because as a support person, you do want to validate, but you want to validate the emotions, not the reasons, because the reasons that they're verbalizing really are probably a distorted version of what's going on. But the emotions are very real, and you can validate that without enabling them to continue those distorted thinking patterns, if that makes sense. So find someone who's willing to help you spot your thinking errors, and be with people who rejuvenate you. I know, like, for a long time I just felt like I had to go places, and I knew that there would be people that would be triggering, and like I just couldn't handle that. And so it just took me a while to be like, it's okay, and this is my recovery time, and I just need to find the people who I'll be like okay with, instead of going into situations knowingly that I'm gonna come out and have a breakdown or be frazzled and stuff. And that's only temporary. Like, you may feel like it's gonna be this way forever and you're just always gonna have to avoid your triggers, but it's incredible, really, what you can learn through recovering, is that you really can recover from your triggers and finally go into situations where those same people or same situations or whatever it is are not triggering anymore. And like now I feel like there's a lot of things that used to trigger me that like I can't even remember what my triggers used to be. And that's a hopeful place to be, and I want to send that message, really, that there is hope, there's ways to work through this. And that's really my purpose, to be able to help people to find that. So the fourth one is to incorporate movement. And the last thing anyone struggling with depression wants to do is get up and move. And if I'm totally honest and vulnerable here, even though my whole degree was exercise and wellness. I studied exercise full-time for 3 years. And I still, like, through this whole thing, I just could not bring myself to exercise consistently because it was so draining to me. But I realized that part of it was because my perception of exercise was get up and do a hardcore workout. You have to, like, rah, get your really hardcore workout in for it to have an effect. But and I really used to think like yoga is for sissies, and like that doesn't really do anything, but oh my gosh, it really does. And so that was my transition into understanding physical movement doesn't have to be an exercise workout that people think of as exercise. Exercise can take many forms. And a lot of the time, restorative exercise is what you need at first. And again, that's not a blanket statement, because some people really do respond very well to high-intensity exercise, to just move the hormones, to switch your thinking, and to get the feel-good hormones. Like, it really can help. But for me, in my situation, because I was already so drained, depleted, and exhausted, that wasn't the form of exercise that I needed. And so when I started to get into yoga and just walking and stuff like that, that helped to really rejuvenate me and get me back to a place where I could go back to those kind of exercises, which I'm just now starting to get to. So it really can be a journey, but don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to do this kind of exercise or this kind of recovery. Like, it's such a customized thing to listen to your body. What do you need in order to be okay and then to finally thrive? So the fifth one is to reset the brain. And this is the key to overcoming depression, because distorted and toxic thinking patterns are at the root of depression. Early on in my journey, I learned from an awesome book called, now I'm blanking, The Molecules of Emotion by Candace D. Pert. So, The Molecules of Emotion. This is a woman scientist way back, I believe, in the 70s. So this is like, decades ago. But she did a lot of work about how emotions are physiologically manifested within our bodies. And this was pivotal to me, to think that there are literally molecules in our bodies, hormones, like we all know that, but that our emotions can be both controlled and like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. But to see that there's this physiological connection, that emotions aren't just like some abstract thing that come upon us, but that there really are pathways in our bodies to physiologically create or change our emotions. And that besides the physiological components of hormones and neurotransmitters and all that stuff, there's also energetic properties that they carry. That our thoughts don't only manifest themselves in that form, but they have live energetic properties that either lift us or destroy us. And I think there's nowhere more apparent that you can see the effect that emotions and thought patterns have than in the case of depression. And this is also where it gets tricky, because you think, yeah, then depressed people just need to fix their thinking and be positive. Well, again, it's not that easy, because of those pathways have been so well worn that they are literally programmed into your body, programmed into your mind, and it's, just like letting water down a river. It takes a great deal of effort to rechannel the power of those thoughts and those energetic pathways within us. So much so that they've created physiological symptoms and diseases within our bodies. But that's why it's so critical to follow these steps so that you can get in a position to start addressing your thought patterns. And I learned this, I was at a point in my journey where I was doing really well with the physical side. And I was doing really well with my sleep. I was just using stress management techniques. I was eating much better. I had gotten vitamins in place, all these things. And I felt really physically better, but I was still depressed all the time. And I'm like, okay, so what's the missing link here? And I know that my thoughts are negative. I know that, I don't want to think this way, but how do I change that? And I went to this meeting called Recovery International, and it was this group that had a psychologist back in the 1900s who he realized that he could just have patients keep coming to him over and over and over again, but then he would get exhausted and burnt out, and his patients wouldn't really find healing. So he designed a program to give to his patients that they could implement themselves and heal themselves at home. And so this group called Recovery International is based on the work of Dr. Lowe, who teaches you how to reframe your thoughts, desensitize triggers, and be able to interact with people in more healthy ways that doesn't elicit these powerful emotional responses when you're in conflict and things like that. And this was a huge eye-opener to me, because I went to this group where, it was bigger than this group right here. And they were sharing their stories to say, yes, I was so debilitated by depression, but when I started implementing these steps to change my thinking, the symptoms were gone, and I am now in a depression-free or managing depression stage, and I feel fine as long as I'm living these steps. And I'm like, really? This is a huge missing link for me. And so I learned better the tools of how to reframe my thinking patterns. So again, that's this is the crux of how to reverse depression and get people back to who they used to be, or who they know they could be or want to be. There's way too much to share here, but again, 3 key things that steps to be able to retrain and reset your brain are, first of all, derail or distract yourself from the negative thoughts. And So I want to give a couple different words of what I mean by negative thoughts, because some people will refer to it as rumination, spiraling thoughts, worries or fears, limiting beliefs, faulty core beliefs, or distorted thinking patterns. So they're all kind of the same thing. So if you're going to go Google on like how to change my thinking patterns, then you can use especially distorted thinking or rumination, and those will give you some key tools to be able to work through that. But when you're really, really down and you do not have the energy to consciously flip your thoughts into more positive, sometimes really all you can do is distract yourself from them. That was the first key for me, and a critical tool that was taught to me by my counselor was just how to stop the thoughts that were going on in my head. So I mentioned before the logic activities. That's a great way to derail those ruminating thoughts. So the second one is to neutralize and challenge those thoughts. So you may be in phase 1 for a long time, where really all you can handle is just to stop them from happening, or to, get to a different place where you're just not thinking about it. And that's okay. It may take weeks to months, however long it takes for you to get to a place where you then can start to reframe them by challenging them, just like my husband did for me. Is that really true? And you realize that a lot of the thoughts that go through our head really aren't true. And because our spirits and like who we are inside are so sensitive to our true nature and who we really are, when we accept thought distortions or we accept lies, it creates a dissonance within us that not only is a cognitive dissonance, but it then creates a physical dissonance as well. And I learned this really powerful just in the last 2 months. And I wish I had like so much time to share even more stories, but really, I believe one of the key causes of depression is from accepting and believing lies about ourselves. Because when you accept it and your spirit knows that's not true, that's not who you really are an amazing, vibrant, beautiful person, but here you are believing and accepting the thoughts that you're worthless, you're nothing, you're just sad all the time, you don't even have any energy, and you believe that about yourself. That's what causes the inner conflict and causes so much of the physiological effects and emotional disturbance that accompanies depression. So when we challenge and start to flip it, which is the third step, to replace and empower our thoughts, that's really where the change begins to happen. And I did have a really interesting experience with this that hit me to the core about what it means to really accept beliefs that aren't true. Because I had been connected with this friend of my sister-in-law. So it was like a roundabout connection, but I really thought it was an inspired connection, because she started teaching me the power of affirmations. And at first I was like, affirmations, like that's just dumb. How can you tell yourself like, I'm amazing, I'm all these things, when you really don't feel it? Like, where's the power in that? Or just to say like, I'm a superhero, like I'm just so awesome, I'm gonna go conquer the world. That's not true either. And you kind of feel that. It's like, this is just dorky. But I had this pivotal moment where I realized affirmations, like when they're used in a powerful way, are not either, it's not telling yourself lies like you're this superhero and you can do anything. It's actually telling yourself truths that displace the negative, the limiting beliefs that you've had. And when they're true statements coming into you, they have so much power to change what's going on inside of you and to lift your spirit. And so when I made that distinction, like, okay, I just have to find the statements that are really true, not just some outlandish thing to make me feel amazing or more than I really am, but to say, like, no, you are a powerful woman. Like, stuff like that just helped me feel a lot better. But what I was going to with about this friend that I was introduced to, she started sending me these affirmation picture quotes that were beautiful. And the first couple that she sent me, I'm like, these are so amazing. Like, they just help me feel connected. They help me feel empowered. But then she sent me a few, and I can't remember exactly what they said, but it was something like, I receive inspiration daily from God, and like, I'm connected with God. And I actually like broke down crying, and it was like eliciting this emotion that I wanted to believe it was true, but there's this dissonance in me. And I asked her, why am I crying? I know in my head that this is true, but why am I crying if I want to believe it? And then this epiphany came. Is it because I have believed for so long that this isn't true, that now that I'm fed with the truth, it elicits this physiological reaction? And she's like, yes. And that really is a key antidote, is to identify what are your beliefs? What do you feel and think and tell yourself every single day that turn you into that person? And if there's anything that, I mean, all of us have it. It's not just people who struggle with depression. Every single one of us have these beliefs that we hold about ourselves. And when we start feeding ourselves truth, it might be uncomfortable for a little while, like I was sitting on the couch crying, but that was enough to get it out and be like, you know what, no more. I am not, like, I know that's not true. So that was a form of me releasing that negative belief, and now I'm empowered by that statement instead of being triggered by it. So these thought distortions are the underlying cause, and the more that we can do to overcome those distortions and replace them with truthful and not just positive, but accurate and optimistic and hopeful glasses instead of distortion glasses, then because of those physiological pathways that emotions create, our thoughts can literally change the way we feel. So if you really want to heal the way you're feeling, heal the way you're thinking. And so that's where professional help comes in. And this is also not a concrete step, because it could be applied at any place in this journey. But I really like to answer the question that people commonly have. Do I need medication? At what point is this a clinical disorder that I should go to a professional, a counselor or a doctor or whatever it is that you're considering to get professional help? And my answer to that is, if this has gotten to a point where it affects your daily ability to live and to connect with people and to just function, that's when you need professional help. And especially when you've tried a lot yourself to get out of it and it's just not working. Because if you're just blue, or if you're just down in the dumps, you can either like reframe your own thinking patterns and move through it, or by talking to a trusted friend or family member, they can help you find the comfort and the peace that you need to move through that, you know, in a couple days or even a couple weeks. But if it's affecting your ability to function on a daily basis and it's ongoing, that's when you need professional help. And the other question people commonly ask is, or at least think about and say, well, I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. I just don't want to. So I want to deal with this naturally. And I say, good for you. Natural is how I went first. But to be completely honest, for me, I wouldn't have been able to make the step and the big jump that I needed to make without medication, because medication got me to a state where I was functioning at an okay place that enabled me to then address the underlying issues. Whereas if, like I said before, if you're just struggling to get out of bed, to make food, or even if you can do those things, I'm not saying everyone is just struggling to make breakfast in the morning, but if you just cannot change the way you're thinking and feeling, then that's when it's a good idea to have this as a tool and a stepping stone. And you do not have to be on medication for the rest of your life. And that is actually what brought me to my full healing, I guess, because right now I would say depression is gone and I've been fully healed of it, I guess, is what you could say. But this only happened within the last 2 months because it was actually spurred on by this last presentation that I gave back in June or July, whenever it was. And I was at a good place, a really good place, but I was still on medication. But I wanted to get off of it, and I wanted to just have certain things in my life back. And because of that, first of all, I decided that it's the time to switch medications to see if there's another one that could work better. And so I did. With talking with my husband about it, we felt really good, like it was the time to switch medications. Well, the one that I switched to, even though I had heard a lot of good things about it, and it seemed like it should have been able to supply what I needed, it made me go straight downhill. And long enough, and I know that there are transition periods, and it's a real roller coaster for people who are trying to find the medication that works for them. But this is when I realized I just want to be off, and I cannot live the life that I'm supposed to live if I am on this emotional functioning roller coaster. And so I said, that's it. I want to find the real help that can actually heal the underlying causes and not just enable me to function or maintain the status quo. And that's where the pivotal point in my journey took me to Utah, because I had this strong impression that I needed to look into energetic medicine. And I had been starting to learn a little bit about it, and I had been introduced to stuff a long time ago, especially with the molecules of emotion. She does talk about how our beings are energetic, and so I thought, this is really interesting, and wanted to learn more about the energetic properties of our bodies, of the ways that we can learn to manipulate the energy around us. Honestly, my biggest question at that point was, how do I ground myself? Because I am so out of balance, I can't even concentrate on one major task or any of these things. And so I just wanted to be grounded. And I had heard from a lot of friends or other people who were learning about energetic medicine, about grounding techniques, emotional clearing techniques, all these things. I'm like, okay, great. This is really what I want to learn, how to ground, clear, and shield myself from the negative energies that are going on around me. And so that was my purpose in going down to Utah, was because there is a big hub of energy workers. And so there's not very many up here in Alaska, and I wanted to find people that I really knew what they were doing and really I could trust and connect with. So I went down there and only knew one person at the time, but through a series of miraculous events, God really led me to exactly the people that I needed to learn from, to heal more, to hear and learn more about the energy centers in the body and how to use energy to restore balance, to clear negative thoughts. And that's really what was pivotal to me, was that no matter how hard I tried to reframe my thinking patterns, until I was able to get some professional help from people who understood the energetic pathways that those thoughts were creating, they helped me clear them and literally get rid of the depression. And so through that learning process, then I came back feeling completely free from it. And so that's something that I really encourage people looking into, how to really heal depression, is to look into energetic medicine. Not because none of the other things won't help or work, but those are kind of culminating, or they create the foundation to then be able to energetically clear those negative thought patterns, to move through them and replace them also energetically with good, positive energy and thoughts and beliefs that can actually stick and stay without having to, every day be such a laborious task to question and challenge your thought patterns. So, let's see. Yes. So, professional help, whether that's a doctor with medication that can help you get you to the next step. Number two, a counselor who can also help you. I think that counselors are some of the greatest people to be able to help you reframe your mind, to work through trauma, a lot of the past issues that have created these distorted thinking patterns. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy of love. I can't do anything right. All of these things, they're rooted in, they could be rooted in trauma. For me, I never had traumatic events or abuse in my childhood. In fact, that was something that was really, what do you call it? It was perplexing to me, because I'm like, everyone says it's all rooted in trauma. I didn't have any trauma, so what went on? Well, really, for me, it was the trauma of having a bully always in my head. And, if you think about it, if you literally had a bully that was following you around every single day, 24/7 hours a day, telling you these things, you just want to punch him in the face and tell him, don't talk to me like that. If you really had that happen, that would be an extremely traumatic, chronic traumatic event. But that was literally what was going on in my mind. So that's exactly how I realized that the power of our thoughts and of ridding ourselves from those... It's right over there. From over there. Ridding ourselves from those toxic thought patterns. So professional help, counseling, or energetic practitioners will really help. So then I think that's number 7, professional help. Number 8 is just knowing your opposition. And like I said before, the more you study about depression, the more you learn its playbook. And I mean that very literally, because depression has its own patterns, its own playbook. It has its own tools that it uses to get people and drag them down. And the more you understand the patterns and the tools that you can use to combat it, it's no longer so scary, because you can see, I have power over this thing. There are literally a myriad of tools and weapons that I can use to combat this. And so that is also my message that I really want people to learn, is that there are tools, many of them out there, that can get you back to the point where it is no longer a struggle in your life to deal with clinical depression. And I just feel so grateful and blessed that I have gone through this to be able to, have this journey to figure out through my own experience what those tools are, and then to be able to turn around and share them with other people. So I guess there's one last thing that I was planning on doing, and I kind of forgot about it. I was going to do it earlier, but, oh no, I didn't forget about it. Okay. There's one more step that's critical, and this will help to illustrate that point. So I'll turn this on. Get it connected. Okay, I just want to make sure that it's connected. Okay, it is. Okay, so this goes back into the final and culminating step, which was rooted in energetic medicine, but really helped me to fully get out of it and find my role in life, and that is to connect with your true identity and purpose. And really, all depression, I want to say all depression is, but I know it's a lot more complicated than that, but when you really get down to it, it's rooted in a disconnect from who you are inside. And you know it, you feel it, because you don't feel like yourself, you don't know who you are anymore, you feel empty, you feel stripped of your personality, you feel all these things where you don't know who you are anymore. Or maybe you knew who you were, but then you lost yourself. And how did you lose yourself, and how do you get yourself back? But all of these things can help to create the environment that you need to truly reconnect. And I guess that's one more thing that happened with the energy practitioners, that I was so disconnected from my mind and body to my spirit. And through their through those practitioners and like cranial sacral therapy, hypnotherapy, something called the body code, emotion code, things like that helped to reestablish that connection to where I actually felt like I was myself again in my body, and not just like trying to get myself back, if that makes sense. So I'm going to sing this song because I find a lot of hope, and I think it carries the message of really what I experienced and hope to inspire other people too. There are times when you might feel aimless, you can't see the places where you belong, but you will find that there is a purpose that's been there within you all along. has really become my theme song because I feel like when I was really into the depths of depression, I was just trying to figure out what is my part, who am I, and what is my purpose. And I knew it was out there. Like, I've just been taught ever since I was a little girl that I am a spirit child of God and that I have great divine power and potential within me, and that there is a specific purpose and mission that only I can accomplish here on this earth. Well, when you feel like the way you are when you're depressed, you're completely disconnected with that. I knew it was there, but I didn't know how to find it. I didn't know how to connect. And it was through this journey, in fact, it was because of this journey that I was forced, I guess, to dig deeper, to find out really who I am, what I'm made of, what I believe, and to be able to become that person. Because if I didn't struggle with this, I would have been complacent. I would have been happy and content with where my life was at, and I wouldn't necessarily have seen a need to change. I mean, I'm always trying to change and become a better person, but it seemed like it kind of would have been a distant thing. Like, I know someday I'm going to be living my life's mission and, like, it's just going to come to me, but this really helped me to dig deeper and see really what my purpose is and the things that I'm supposed to accomplish in this life. And I believe that one of my life's purpose and missions is to reach out and help other people out of the darkness. And each one of us, like the song says, plays an important piece, and that all we have to do is just listen at first. We may feel like, oh, I don't know if I can get involved in this symphony. It's like way too complex or intimidating or whatever it is. But really, if you just become aware, start listening in, start asking questions, stuff like this, all these things that wake you up and make you more aware of what's going on around you, what's going on within you, and what God has in store for you to do. And you will be able to tune into that, tap into it, and I will say it's the most amazing and exhilarating thing in the world when you finally have that connection. And depression is the antithesis of that, but it is completely possible to get to be that person who you really know you are inside. And with that, I thank you for being here and allowing me to share my journey. And really, my purpose is just to help other people to be able to find their tools, learn their melody, so that they can wake up and be a part of this great symphony of life as well. Thank you.
Thank you.